I'm sure many of us know someone, if not you, who's felt uncomfortable talking about religion and money or just have feelings of shame or guilt about it. Welcome to Yahweh's Money, a podcast where we discuss the crossroads or intersections of religion and money. We're going to go deep into topics like tithing and saving and debt and so much more from the religious view. I'm your host, Shay Cook, CEO and founder, Crusaders for Change, LLC, and our co-host is Vanessa McNelly, one of our financial counselor, coach, educators. Let's talk about God and money. Hey everyone, how do you feel about lending money to loved ones? Can it be lethal and kill relationships, spirits, passions, and more? Oftentimes it's awkward and inconvenient for the person lending, not to mention embarrassing for the borrower. Today we'll be delving into the tangled web of love and lending. Lethal lending is what we like to call it. We've been there, wanting to support our loved ones financially, only to find ourselves in murky waters when things go wrong. From navigating online love scams to the complexities of lending money within relationships, we're down in the mud, covering it all, strapping in as we explore the pitfalls of mixing money with matters of the heart. Hey, Vanessa, that's a lot. It's heavy
It,
too.
that is so much. And I will tell you, Shay, I think we've both been there,
Yes.
on one side or the other with this, but it really can ruin a relationship. And it's really hard to come back from this.
It really is. And we're going to go deep into all of this today. And wow, hold on, you guys, because it's a lot. And it might offend some and make some feel like, yeah, I've been there. So, oh, wow. So, in Luke 35, it says, but love your enemies and do good and lend, expecting nothing in return, and your reward will be great. And you will be sons of the Most High, for he is kind to the ungrateful and the evil. Amen. I know a lot of times family members are trying to lend money, and I'm like,
Right.
why? Just give. Just stop lending.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think when we come into things a little differently and we come in from a spiritual, perspective, it does help on both sides. So, what are some things that we should consider before we're lending? I mean, how
Hmm.
do you feel if the loan's not repaid?
So many stories, as
Right?
I've shared on this podcast before. I've been Bank of Shay. I had to close it down the last few years
Mhm.
because lending to friends and family causes so many issues. And I realize I think it's more on the other person's side than it's on the lender side because
Yeah.
they're feeling a certain way about it. And sometimes, you'll see them at functions or try to get together and they're separating themselves because of the guilt and the shame that we always
Right.
talk about and that we're always going to talk about is there. People feel guilty. And sometimes I wonder, did you ever plan to pay it back? You know?
I agree with that. Yeah, it's one of those situations where I think it can put you in this headspace as the lender when you see that person and you're like, well, why are you going to Chick-fil-A? Because you still owe me $500. And why are you buying a new outfit? Because you still owe me
Yeah,
$500.
that happens.
Right? And we get like, I wouldn't say jealous, but we get very judgy with
Mm,
everything that we see these people do. And they're people we love and they're, people that we want to see succeed in
yeah.
life. But we see these things that are happening and we know that if we were in that position, we think we'd be paying back the money first or we wouldn't have taken it in the first place
Exactly.
or, all these things. But, when we give or lend, how do we come from a place of, I guess, giving
Mm,
without really saying, okay, I want this back, here are the terms, all those good things, and not having that, I guess, that heavy heart.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
You know, this is a heavy topic,
it
and I'm kind of
really
holding back
is.
too because I don't know who's listening.
I agree. I feel the same way.
Because I don't
So,
want to offend anything or bring up
yeah,
any old stuff, right? That we've kind of
right.
just moved past. But you're
Yeah.
so right, going back to the judgy piece, right? It's like for me, if somebody lended me money, which I thank God I haven't really had to borrow money from family and friends. And if I did, I always paid them back within
Mm-hmm.
the certain terms that we set. I always sacrificed on my end. So I was not living beyond my means. So I could pay them back. And
Yep.
that's where I think you're saying, like when people going to Chick-fil-A or vacations or buying cars, and you're like, wait a minute, you still owe me money. Like, what are you doing? You
Exactly.
should not be doing any of that until you pay me back. Like, that should be your priority. But as we know, that's not their priority. They're just living life and moving on to the next thing and the next debt and the next
Mhm.
issue. And they
Mhm.
totally forget about you, some of them, you know?
They do, and there was a time in my life I borrowed $5,000 from my grandparents. And it was because I was moving to Germany and you had to own your car outright to be able
Mm.
to ship it overseas. And I owed $5,000 on my car. I was like 26 years old. And my grandparents were like, "Of course, we will loan you the money so you can take your car and be able to drive over there." But I made sure that that was the very first thing that I did was pay my grandparents back and let them know how much I appreciated the loan.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because I did it that way later in life, they've always been more than willing to help when I needed it,
Yeah.
even though thankfully I haven't really needed it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think when you do those things and you borrow and you pay back responsibly, it really helps people see your character too,
So true. So
you
true.
know? So, but what about lending money to loved ones and it destroys that
Hmm.
relationship? Have we thought about maybe just giving it as an outright gift? I mean, if we look back at Luke and
Mm-hmm.
we read this verse again, um, what if we look at things as if we get the money back? That's wonderful. It's a blessing. I'm really excited if that happens, but know in our hearts that we probably will never see that money again. Um, is that something that most of us are willing to do when a loan is made to a family member?
I've came to a point in my life, probably a decade, 2 decades ago, where my husband was trying to teach me this lesson. And I finally learned, like, I never lend to family anymore. Because and some people probably can pay back, but I just know, I personally don't want to deal with the headache. I don't want them feeling a certain way. If you need money, but you have to really need money, right? You ain't got no
Right.
food, you need shelter, your electricity, whatever, gas, electric, those kind of things that you need to live, your car, whatever, those kind of things. Your children need something, but I ain't paying for no Chick-fil-A. You better of course, if we're going out and we're hanging out, but you know what I mean? Like, I mean, it has to be a necessity. It can't be a want.
Right.
And I'm just going to give an outright gift. Like the Lord, I think really kind of intends, because he's going to, first of all, if we go back to the word, God is going to supply all our needs, and he does. And if we're giving, we get from that as well. There's a blessing in giving.
Agree.
So now I don't lend to anybody.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. I'm totally with you. And I think it depends on the amount that's needed as well.
true. Mm-hmm.
So if it's a larger amount, I mean, that's something that's going to impact you and your family.
Mm-hmm.
So, a loan makes sense.
Yeah.
I know I have been in a position where I've helped a couple family members in the past and I've made contracts. And I hate to say that I did that because, everything's laid out and there's regulations and rules. But I did that because I didn't want somebody coming back saying, "Oh, well, you didn't say that," or "Oh, that
Mhm.
didn't happen," or, that was not something we discussed or talked about. But, when you're talking about something as large as a house or, a down payment on something, then those things to me make sense to have a contract if you do that. But
Mhm.
anything smaller than that, I completely consider a gift just like you. Because I think that's the best way to go into this is to have that giving heart. Like you said, we do get something back out of giving.
Mhm.
And if somebody, comes back to you and says, "Here's the money I borrowed," that's a blessing in itself. And you weren't expecting it back. So that's a gift right back to you.
Yeah, exactly. When you talk about those bigger purchases, our family hasn't been fortunate in a previous generation. I think we are in this current generation building up more wealth, which is great.
Hmm.
But, my parents' generation, their parents' generation, they didn't have that kind of money to give.
Right.
So, but
Right.
as we've gotten older and things were being more responsible, we have that to give. But then I start to
Hmm.
question, like, if you can't afford a down payment, should you be buying a home?
Exactly.
Should you be buying that car if you can't
Right.
afford to, those are the kind of, and they know that Shay's going to, because as
Yeah.
financial counselors, they're not coming in
Yeah.
because I'm going to be
Yeah.
like, oh, we need to do a budget. We need to have a conversation about long-term goals and what that looks like. Can you really afford it after you buy this big purchase? Can
Right.
you maintain it? All the stuff that goes
Exactly.
into a house, all the stuff that goes into a car, whatever that may be. So I'm having those kind of conversations with me. So that's probably why nobody
Yeah.
comes to me anymore.
Yeah.
Because
Well, I
like
do
that.
those too. Yeah,
Yeah.
I complete. Yeah,
Yeah.
I helped a family member, purchase a mobile home a while
Hmm.
back, and we had that conversation. I was like, before we do this, can you create a budget?
Yeah, that's
Here's the
good.
budget spreadsheet. This is what I want you to do. See what you can truly afford monthly. Is this feasible? And things happen.
Yeah,
People lose jobs.
true.
Downsizing happens. So you have to be lenient when you do these things too,
Hmm.
because it's different than borrowing money from a bank
Yeah.
because there is that flexibility.
Hmm.
So in my mind, it's like it's not something we should count on monthly.
Yeah.
It's like if it comes back to us, awesome, like we've discussed. And if we are fair with people and we have this giving heart, we're going to be blessed 50 times over.
Yeah, so
So
true.
yeah. But then it comes back to, do we even have the money to spare? So that's the big thing. And I think a lot of people see that, do we have the money to spare, whether it's repaid or not?
Hmm.
That's a huge question to
Yeah.
ask.
And I think that's why I closed down the Bank of Shade, not only because of the
Hmm.
frustration with the family members and friends, what it was like, but I have my own goals and I'm not meeting my own goals. I have a child
Right.
that's about to go to college, or we got a house that we need to take care of. I needed to buy a car at one time and this time, and all that, and whatever other things are. So, can I meet my own needs?
Right. Yeah.
And once I give to you, who's going to take care of me? And then it starts this vicious cycle because now I got to go borrow, and now
Right.
this person's got to go bar, and I don't want to do that. So I need to make sure that I'm taken care of. And as we're talking to everybody in this podcast, we want to be here to support you to be able to take care of yourselves first.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like Vanessa is saying, you need to borrow, whether it's
Hmm.
bank or a friend, and it is more flexible. But are you taking care of yourself before you're lending? Yeah.
And it's okay to take care of yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
I think especially a lot of women have this
Mm.
this need to take care of everyone else first. I mean,
Yeah.
I think both you and I have that in us. And it's one of those things where it's like it's okay to take care of yourself, because when you take care of yourself, in turn, you are taking care of others. You're
Yeah.
taking care of your children when you take care of you, because they don't have to worry about you.
Exactly.
So it's not being selfish, it's not being greedy, it's not wanting or asking for too much. But when you take care of yourself first, it helps everyone involved. So, if you don't have the money to spare, it's okay to say, I can't right now, but this is what I can do. Or can you come back to me next year? Or, whatever. I mean, we don't owe explanations.
Yeah,
Um,
really.
but the reality is sometimes we can't spare the money.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and from someone looking on the outside, they probably think, well, they have a nice car and they have a nice house and, they have all these things. They're just being stingy or greedy or whatever that might be. But then it's like, how did you get to that place?
I know.
Right? It was through sacrifice and
Sacrifice,
saving.
hard work, time, and
Hmm.
time. My husband and I have this conversation often because everybody thinks Shay and Nate are rich. Okay. We are not rich.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and we're always thinking, and even my daughter thinks, y'all got to a certain amount of wealth. And like, no, first of all, we've been together forever. Literally, I've been
Hmm.
together with my husband longer than I was with my parents or anybody else. And
Right.
so, like, it took a long time to get where we're in. And even if we weren't together, it takes time, right? And sacrifice and responsibility and just organization and so many other things, right? Having those real goals, smart
Right.
goals, all that good stuff. And so it just takes time, and this doesn't happen overnight.
It doesn't. And when people who are borrowing from us don't see that, or they're not willing to put in the time or the effort or the sacrifice, then there's a reason that they're not getting to the level of success in my mind that they want to,
Yeah.
because they're not willing to put in the work.
Not willing to put in the work.
Not willing to put in the work. And, I think if anybody were to look at you or myself 10 years ago or 20 years ago or whatever it might be, they would see that, we came from these places of having so much less than we have
So
now.
much less.
And I'm so thankful for what I have now. But I'm okay if I don't have those things as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And I'll
Mhm.
make do with what I have and I'll be
Mhm.
thankful for what I have. And I think some people they just can't live in that realm.
Yeah.
It's more, I, need to have what my neighbor has, or I need to go on this
Mhm.
trip. It's a need, not a want. So that's something we need to think about too.
Yeah. Exactly. Because, Nate always talk about too, my husband, that we could have had that multi-million dollar home. We could have had this, we could have had that. And we chose not to because we wanted to put our
Right.
money into other stuff, experiences and travel and, putting our dollar to college, whatever. That's what we chose. And there's nothing
Right.
wrong with that. And,
Not at all.
everybody has their own needs and own wants, and don't judge me. And I'm not going to judge my family member either. But if you're asking me for money and you're not responsible with what God is giving you, we have a problem.
Exactly. Agree.
And now let's go into loneliness and lending online. There's a lot of catfishing and online scams going on, whether it's romance scams. It's a crazy world out there, y'all. I've heard of so many people giving away. There's like through Finra Foundation, they got these videos now out that are talking about people, real people, Americans being not catfish or romance scams for
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of dollars that they're taking out of their retirement to pay somebody in Africa or Asia or even in America that doesn't
Hmm.
exist, or they exist and they're just not really in love with them. They go through this whole process of making these people fall in love with them online.
Yeah.
They never met them, they never talked to them, which is crazy. And I don't want to judge or criticize or anybody, but I don't know. I don't know.
It's different.
Sometimes.
And I know you've been married for a very long time.
Yeah.
So, it's a different dating world out there.
Yeah.
But, I've been single the last few years. Dating somebody, been with them for a little over a year now,
Mhm.
but, we met online.
Mhm.
So, you do have to take those things with a grain of salt in the beginning too, because you don't know who that person is.
Yeah.
There have been so many dating apps I've even been on, and half the people on there are fake. They're fake
Wow.
profiles, and they have these conversations. They really try to kind of ingrain themselves into you, and they want to get to know you. And when you're lonely and you're sitting there by yourself day in and day out, I'm sure it's something that most people like that are, they feel wanted and loved for the first time in a long time.
Mhm.
And that's hard to say, okay, I'm lonely and I'm willing to give up my retirement or the money I've saved for vacation for this person that I think is real. But I don't, it, there's always red flags with this, like
Mhm.
always, always red flags. So it's a tough situation, and it's tough when you see somebody going through
Yeah,
this,
exactly. And I think I know, and I think we all know this, that romance scams have been around before the internet. Right. So
right?
I mean you meet somebody in a bar, you meet somebody in church. They might not
Yeah.
be who they are. You gotta get the time. I met my husband on American Online, AOL, 100 years ago. If any people even know what that is. I've said that to some youngins recently and they're like, what is that? I'm like, oh my God. So, anyways, but I mean, even meeting him there, I had to get to know him and learn him, and it took years to really get to
Right.
know my husband. And even day to day, you learn little things, but I know most of him now. But still, like, yeah, I mean, romance scams, I'm sure have been around, but now forever. But they've been exasperated and
Hmm.
increased by crazy exponentially because of online, because of internet. And
It is.
so
Yeah.
and people are lonely and they're willing to do anything for a connection. I mean, I know during the pandemic this was exasperated as well because people were sitting at home, especially if you were sitting at home by yourself and not talking to your family, or you don't have family, or you're not close to your family, or whatever your situation may be. People are really lonely. And I mean, I have
They
to add in
are.
here, this is a time when you need to be really close to God, because anything and everything, especially evil, will come after you when you're not
Right.
connected. And I mean, hopefully, people are listening, are believers, or and even if you're not a believer, I'm telling you, from my experience, I know that when I was lonely, that's when you really need to be close to God, because
Agree.
mind starts to play some tricks on you and make you want to do all kinds of crazy stuff. And I'm saying I've been there, done that. So and you talking about finding how the finances come in. Oh man, I'm lonely. Let me go buy, as I always say, let's go buy that cheeseburger. Let's go get those
Exactly.
clothes. Or let's go
Right.
on this shopping spree. Or let's
Yeah.
go look at
Yeah.
cars. Oh, let's go look at homes. Why am I doing this? Because I'm lonely, I'm sad, I'm depressed. when you
Mhm.
need to be dealing with the internal loneliness that's going on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I witnessed this with my dad.
Mm.
After my mother passed away,
Mhm.
he was very lonely. And, it's to me, it was perfectly fine for him to go out and date and do things because he was with my mom until she passed. So, till death do us part. And she was okay with it too. And she'd even said, he's going to get lonely and he's going to need someone. So, you
Oh,
need to support that.
yeah.
So I was always trying to be very supportive of that.
Mhm.
But he always tried to buy those relationships, whether he was out at a bar and he would buy, drinks or dinners for everybody at the bar just to feel wanted and needed,
Mhm.
or, with someone he was potentially going to date. He was seen as, Mr. Moneybags at that point.
Mm.
But, it's sad when you see that loneliness. And I would always try to convince him to, go to church because
Mhm.
Wednesday night they had free dinners. And,
Yeah, I remember you telling
here
me
he
he
was.
enjoyed that when he went too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I went up there and we went together.
Mhm.
And it was one of those things where I think there's always an option to fill those voids and lonely gaps with, with more, I guess, with things that really matter. And we
Mm.
can use our loneliness to help somebody
So
else.
true.
Right. So donate your time, go
Mhm.
somewhere where there's a lot of other,
Mhm.
singles in the same boat as you or whatever it might be. But it's easy to get sucked in when you're sitting at home in a dark room by yourself, and you're lonely and somebody's willing to sit there and text with you or, have a phone conversation with you and make you feel very important.
Exactly. And then you get, unfortunately, a lot of people, millions of people get scammed.
They
And then
do.
now they're embarrassed or scared because they've been taken advantage of. And so they're not
Exactly.
reaching out for help. And there's so many programs, guys, out there. Please just use your search engine, Google, Bing, whatever, to look for
Right.
help if you're one of those people, because we've all been there. We've all been embarrassed or scared of getting help for whatever our issue is. But if you've been taken advantage of by an online scam, a romance scam, a catfishing, anything where it's taking your money, please
Hmm.
seek help because it's real out there, y'all. And people, I, I, I I laugh and I just cry at the same time a little bit, just hearing the stories of people giving away, and there's nothing anybody did. They don't get their money back.
No, no.
There's no way for them to get their money back.
Exactly. And I think that's something we need to talk about more too is
Mm.
it's okay to have these conversations. Um, and it just shows how lonely someone can be.
Hmm.
So if we find people that are in this position where something has happened and they are embarrassed or scared to talk about it, why are they embarrassed or scared to talk about it? It's because the rest of us out here are judging them for that,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
So if we make it easier to have these conversations and bring people in, then they're not going to feel as lonely in the first place. So, if we can do that, have those conversations, bring people in. But yeah, we need to stop being embarrassed or scared and say, it's okay. I'm sorry you went through that. Let's get through it.
Let's get through it. You're not alone, and we're
Right.
here to support you any way we can. So, especially
Exactly.
Crusaders for Change, we can help you with the financial piece, but we can also connect you with those resources to help you
Yeah.
get through all of that.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah,
And we will not judge you. There will
not at
be no
all.
judgment on our part.
No judgment. That's
So-
on the Lord. That's not on us. That's
right.
not our responsibility.
Exactly. So, we've talked a little bit about lending online, but what happens when you're in a relationship
Hmm.
and you have somebody that needs money? And what happens if you break up? That's the big one.
Yeah.
And I've been through this. Uh,
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
but this just shows us, that if we take care of ourselves a little bit more and we're, okay with saying no,
Mm, yeah.
that, we're going to get a little further in life. And I think a lot of people know my Jeep story. Uh, dating someone that needed a vehicle, and I had the money and bought him a Jeep. So I'm sorry to my current boyfriend, I'm not buying you a Jeep. But but in the past, yeah, that was the situation. And I think it came from me needing to feel loved
Yeah.
and needing to feel like I was wanted. And to be in that position where, you are so, I guess, lonely or you crave that connection that you feel like you need to do that or you're going to lose a connection,
Yep.
that's a sad place to be.
Yeah, it
It
really
is a
is.
super sad place to be. So, do
Yeah.
you have any experiences with that, Shay?
I do, but mines are crazy because I was a crazy kid. Again, I married my husband when I was 20. So I was younger. I was dating a guy that I had met on American Online. I met a lot of guys on American Online. That's another story for another podcast. That's not Yahweh's money because it's not religious. And so I was out in these streets, y'all. Ugh,
Mm-hmm.
I was thotting out there. Oh Lord, did I say that? Lord, Lord, forgive me. So don't use that as a clip, our manager. So, anyways, so I was dating this guy and I had bought him some Jordans. It's so funny. I bought him some Jordans. I was working at Sports Authority.
Yeah.
And just because, I was just trying to, get that attention, that love, whatever, whatever. But he wasn't treating me right. So I got my brother and his friends to go threaten his life and beat him up or something like that to get my Jordans back.
Oh,
I was like, I
violence is always the answer. No.
Lord forgive me. Lord. And I think I lied to my brother. I think I recently told my brother, like, yeah, bro, he didn't really do what I told you to do. I just wanted my Jordans back. Cause I was like, this, ain't gonna get away with this.
Oh my
And keep
gosh.
my Jordans. You gonna give me my Jordans back. So yeah, I was like one of those. But I remember my dad raised us his two girls. He had three kids. He has three kids, two girls and a boy, my brother and sister. I'm the oldest. And he always taught the girls, do not buy things for guys because they're just going to walk out on you. I remember
Oh.
hearing you don't buy shoes for guys because they're just going to walk out on you with their shoes. And I think he might have been right because I didn't buy Nate shoes until like 10 years into our relationship because
You knew it was there to stay.
I thought he was going to walk out on me if I bought him shoes. Like these are these old adages that these people used to tell me,
So
and I
funny.
believed. It was crazy. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm sure I bought guys I used to pay for all kinds of things,
Right.
hotels. I think I
But
shared that at one of our Took On My Money Bone things. My parents
yeah.
was like, "What? You were out?" Yeah, because you got to get your freak on, and I
Mm-hmm.
wasn't doing that at home. So,
Mm-hmm.
but I would be the one paying for it, and so I was just like, "What?" Okay.
Right.
So
Yeah.
anyway, so I can go on
Yeah.
and deeper and share some of my deepest dark secrets. I ain't doing that.
Right. But
But yeah, it was just crazy how people they were taking advantage of me, but
yeah,
I was just living my life,
exactly.
right? I
Exactly.
was young and dumb. So
Well, and it's funny the things we learn from our parents too and
yeah,
bring it on into, new relationships.
yeah.
I grew up in a house where my parents were very giving.
Hmm.
And, it was nothing to, give to somebody on the street corner or somebody that that's fallen on hard times.
Hmm.
So that was ingrained in me that
Mm.
that's what makes you a good person is
Mhm.
giving. Even in times where, you're not able to give as much as you want. Like I remember times my dad would give $50 to somebody and go home and eat a bologna sandwich,
Oh, wow.
And it was like, okay, you're giving this money so they can go out and have something to eat, but you're
Mhm.
going to go home and kind of do without ish,
Mhm.
which there's nothing wrong with if
Yeah.
that's your heart. But, you find yourself kind of repeating these things, right? And sometimes they're good habits, but sometimes they're not so great habits.
Mhm.
And I think there's a time and a place for all of this.
Mm.
And if that's truly your heart and that's something that, you want to give, go back to the whole, giving versus lending.
Yeah,
Lending just it can turn ugly so fast
it
in a
really can.
relationship. And then what does happen when you break up? Because honestly, you're never going to see that money again. I mean,
Exactly.
that's just reality. And
Yeah.
you give that money and you're like, "Oh, I love you and we're going to be together forever." And
Mhm.
then, 2 months down the road something happens and it's like,
Mhm.
"Okay, I'm really regretting that decision." So, I guess that's another thing we can look at too is say, "Okay, if we were to break up, what would this look like?" And it's okay to write things down and sign things. It really,
Exactly.
really is, if that's the route you want to go. And then if we're loaning large sums of money, how can that ruin or harm our futures or our retirements when we do it for love?
Yeah, because all that money I was spending on hotels and shoes and dinners out and trips or whatever, I could have been putting in the
Right?
savings. Could have bought a car. Like I could have did a lot of things with that money, and that money is
Exactly.
gone. I never will see it. But it's part. But I'm not gonna feel bad. I dealt with that in therapy, and with Jesus,
Mhm.
all of that stuff, because I had to forgive
Mhm.
myself, right? Like,
You do.
you have to just self forgiveness is super. I think it's sometimes more important, if not more important, than forgiving other people, because you forgive
Yeah.
people and then you forget to forgive yourself. And then you're sitting in that every day because you're with
Mhm.
yourself 100% of the time, right? So you're sitting there and like, oh my God, I did A, I did C, I did do all the way through Z. Like,
Mhm.
I feel bad, I feel guilty, I feel shame, but whatever.
Right.
I was young, I was learning. And as long
Mhm.
as I learned from it and I
Exactly.
don't repeat this bad behavior,
Exactly.
and you know
Yes.
what? I heard, like, I just saw an article or read something that was like, or saw on TV or whatever, but said that your 20s are your worst decade. Like, they said it has been proven that your 20s
Ah.
will be your worst time of your life. And I was like, you know what? But guess what? It set a really
Mhm.
good foundation of what not to do, what to do.
Exactly.
I ain't mad at my 20s. Yeah, I was out here being a heathen. Okay, I was being a heathen. And you know what? I ain't mad. I was getting
Oh.
drunk. I was doing all kinds of stuff. But you know what? Look at me now. I learned my lesson. I drink red wine instead of drinking vodka all the time,
Same.
or bourbon or whiskey, whatever my husband does.
Oh,
So, just like
too
I done
funny.
went up.
Oh.
I leveled up. So it's
Yeah.
all good. It's all good.
But
Yeah.
you're right. As long as we can learn from those things
Yeah.
and we know how to kind of like change things or do them differently or
Yeah.
not do them at all later
Yeah.
on. Mistakes are there for a
They're
reason.
there for a
And
reason.
there is a lesson that needs to be learned from these things.
Hmm.
And as long as we can see that lesson and take that forward and, share it with other people too. That's why
Yeah.
having these conversations are always a good idea. So we shouldn't be embarrassed or scared to talk about these things.
And we really shouldn't. And just turn back to the Lord. Like says Romans
Exactly.
13:8 says, there let no debt remain outstanding except the continuing debt to love one another. For whoever loves others has fulfilled the law. And I would add in there, Lord, love yourself too.
Mhm.
So as long as you continually loving others and yourself, forgive yourself and others, you are good. So any final thoughts? That was a great, great, great conversation.
Yeah, I would just say be gentle with yourself
Mm.
and be gentle with others because we don't know what they're going through. And if we can give and we're able to give and that's something that's on our heart, do it. But I truly feel like most scenarios, giving is way better than lending.
Giving, yes, I agree. And I would say add on that being gentle, giving grace. Give grace. You give yourself grace, give others grace. Like Vanessa says, you don't know what other people are going through. They don't know what you are going through. Got to be grace. And you know what? New mercies come every day from the Lord. So thank you, Jesus, for that. So, wow. Thanks. This is amazing. I just have to say, always remember it's better Yahweh's way. Thank you for listening to this episode. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the crossroads of religion and money. Also, we would love to hear your feedback on today's episode, so please leave us a review or just tell us what's on your mind. And remember to follow our podcast. If you have any questions or suggestions of topics for us to discuss, please email us at yahweh@crusaders4change.org. To hear all of Yahweh's Money latest episodes, please visit us at www.crusaders4change.org or wherever podcasts are found. God bless.